family's future. But it is well for him when this Muscular has decided cerebral tendencies. Second choice for the Muscular is a mate predominantly cerebral. The Muscular in this case furnishes the brawn to work out the plans made by the brain of the Cerebral, and the combination is one that stands a good chance of happiness. Third choice is the Thoracic, and fourth choice the Alimentive. Part 4. The Osseous in Love. Bring to mind all the men and women you have known who waited 10, 20, or 30 years for the one they had given their hearts to. You will recall that they all had large bones or large joints for their bodies. Such people are always predominantly osseous. The loved one may marry, but the bony man or woman remains faithful. It must be the one they want or none. The riddle solved. This fact accounts for some of the incongruous matches in middle or later life of old friends who seem to be unfitted to each other. Often one of them has waited many years for the other to consent, for children to grow up, or for death to clear the way. One lover through life. Osseous men and women are so constituted that it is practically impossible for them to love many times during a lifetime. Bony people, even when young, have fewer sweethearts than other types. The large-boned boy or girl is usually ill at ease in the presence of the other sex, avoids social affairs, and does not attract love as early in life as the other types do. They suffer keenly from the near ostracism resulting from this, but are powerless to change it. Live apart from others. Because they live more or less apart from their fellows, even as children, and tend to withdraw into themselves, the Osseous see little of the other sex, learn little about it, and come to think of it as unapproachable. As we have seen, the Alimentive feels at ease with the other sex, the Thoracic charms them, the Muscular cultivates them when he is in earnest, but the Osseous avoids them. If he does not marry, he becomes more and more awkward in their presence as he grows older. Such a person will often go a block out of his way to avoid meeting a person of the opposite sex. Marries less often. This naturally leads to the unmated life which characterizes so many men and women of the Osseous type. We asked you to recall the 1 or 2 Alimentive bachelors and spinsters you ever knew, the 3 or 4 Thoracics, and the not more than half a dozen Musculars who didn't marry. But it will take some time to enumerate the Osseous people you know who have never married. This type constitutes a very large proportion of the unmarried. Most difficult to live with. When the Osseous does marry, he is the most difficult of all types to live with, because he is inclined to be immovable and unbending. To give and take has long been considered the secret of happy marriage, and certainly is one of them. But this type finds it almost impossible to adapt himself to his mate. He wants everything in a certain way, at a certain time, and for a certain purpose. Whoever opposes him is pretty ruthlessly handled. Another marital liability of this type is his disinclination and inability to make new friends. He contributes to the family circle only those few intimates he has had for years. Likes to dominate. The Osseous is inclined to dominate and often to domineer over his mate and over his family in general. This is as true of the women as of the men. As we have seen, type and not sex is what causes the big distinctions between people. The henpecked husband. Whenever you see a henpecked husband, look at his wife. You will always find that she has either large joints, large bones, or a square jaw. Many times we have heard men declare, "They would show such a wife how to act," but unless they could change her boniness, they would find it difficult to show her much of anything. The reason the husband of such a woman seldom resists is because he is 9 times out of 10 an Alimentive or a Cerebral, types that prefer to be bossed rather than to boss. The same combination is usually present when the husband dominates the wife. He is almost invariably bony, and she is either Alimentive or Cerebral. And other women say, "I'd like to show such a husband what I would do if he tried to tyrannize over me as he does over her." But such a woman often prefers a husband who relieves her of the responsibility of decisions, and 2 such people sometimes lead surprisingly happy lives together. Mates for the Osseous. Therefore, the type best fitted to live in harmony with the predominantly Osseous is the predominantly Alimentive. Second choice is the predominantly Cerebral, for the reasons stated above. There is no third choice. The pure Osseous and pure Thoracic should not marry because they are too far removed from each other in all their tendencies ever to understand each other. The one type the pure Osseous should never mate with is his own. Nothing but trouble results when two of the extreme bony type marry, for each has definite views, desires, and preferences, and neither can give in. Part 5. Love and the Cerebral. The Cerebral type takes most of his love out in dreaming. He is as impractical about his affections as about all else, and often nothing but hopes come of it. Next to the Osseous, he marries less frequently than any other type. Head and heart in the clouds. The Cerebral often remains single because he cannot come down to earth long enough to propose, or if he does, he is so gentle and timid about it that the girl is afraid to trust her life to him. Timidity his curse. Timidity costs the Cerebral man most of the good things he could otherwise get out of life. He is almost afraid to fall in love, afraid to speak after he does, and afraid to face the hostile world with 2 lives in his hands. Women like him. The average woman likes the Cerebral type of man, but seldom loves or adores him. His helplessness appeals to her motherly sympathy. Cannot buffet the world. But women are afraid to marry the extreme type even when the feeling he prompts is more than mere protectiveness. They know he cannot buffet the world for them and their offspring. So, even when they love him best, they usually marry the fat salesman, the muscular worker who always has a good job, the thoracic promoter who promises luxury, or the Osseous man who won't take no for an answer. Always leap year for him. When this type of man does marry, it is often due as much to her proposal as his. He is especially aided in his courtship if she happens to be a quick-spoken Thoracic, a straight-from-the-shoulder muscular, or one of those determined Osseous girls. The much-loved Cerebral woman. The Cerebral woman is more fortunate in achieving marriage than the Cerebral man. The impracticality which so seriously handicaps him, since the husband is supposed to support the family, is not quite so much of a handicap to her. Men who love her at all, love her for her tenderness, conscientiousness, and delicacy, and deem it a pleasure to work for her, and she is one type of woman who usually appreciates it. The Cerebral's weaknesses. The tendency to dream his life away instead of doing tangible things that assist in the progress of the family is the greatest marital handicap of the Cerebral type. Inability to make money results directly from this, and since money is so important in the rearing and educating of children, those who cannot get it are bound to face hardship and disillusionment. The saddest sight. The most pathetic sight to be seen anywhere is that of the delicate, intellectual man who loves his family dearly, has the highest ideals, and yet is unable to provide for them. When love flies out the window. When poverty comes in the door, love flies out the window, is a saying as old as it is sad. And it is as true as it is both old and sad. Despite the philosophers, who are all Cerebrals themselves, love should grow in sheltered soil, protected from the buffetings of wind and storm. Without means, no man can provide this protection. Happy marriage, as we have seen, is based on the cultivation of the strong points and the submergence of the weak ones of each partner. Poverty does more to bring out the worst in people and conceal the best than anything else in the world. So, although this type is high-minded, more idealistic in his love than any other type, and has fewer of the lower instincts, he makes less of a success of marriage than any other type. Mates for the Cerebral. Because he lives in his mind and not in his external world, the predominantly Cerebral must marry one who also is predominantly Cerebral. The reading of books, attendance at good plays, and the study of great movements constitute the chief enjoyments of this type, and if he has a mate who cares nothing for these things, his marriage is bound to be a failure. The Cerebral he marries should, however, be inclined